Want to learn about doing school visits, booking them, and creating engaging presentations? Then this is a show for you. I'm Tonya Duncan Ellis with Write This, my author interview show, and I'm pleased today to welcome Cathey Nickell, who is a Houston-based author who does many school visits. She's been very successful with school visits. So I'm going to invite her on, and it's going to be a wonderful show. Let me get her on here. And she's been excited to come on and talk to us all about doing school visits. Pick her brain and learn all about
I think I figured it out. I'm so sorry about that.
Yes. Oh, no. So I'm so happy that you had the time. I know how busy you are with all your school visits, and it's wonderful.
Yeah,
time to sit
I had
down.
one yesterday and I have one Friday. So.
Right. Following your page and seeing all that you're doing and seeing the happy faces of the kids who are, really engaged in what you're doing. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and where you're from?
I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana, but I've been in Houston for like 25 years. So, but my background was in journalism. I was a newspaper reporter and for a long time, and then I went into public relations work. But in 2014, I got this idea to write a children's book about a man who drives an art car and makes friends along the way, like community kind of comes in and helps him. And so that's what got this whole children's book thing rolling. So.
Right. Now, can you tell people what an art car is?
Okay, so an art car, I found out about them in Houston. I'd never seen one before, but an art car is where these kind of creative people take a plain car and they decorate it. They either paint it or they glue things to it. They do something usually with a theme, and they end up driving it, though, every day. It's not just for a parade. It's not like a float. It's actually their daily car, usually. They might have a backup car, but a lot of them don't. So, yeah, and they're trying to spread creativity, or they often have a message they're trying to share. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, what is your book? Can you show us?
This is my book. This is Arthur Czar's Amazing Art Car. And it's just a really cute picture book. And I did not illustrate it. I have an illustrator named Bill Meganhart. And then I have another book called Yazzy's Amazing Yarn. And it's illustrated by, a different illustrator. So I'm a writer, but not an illustrator. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, those, and I see with the art car, it has a blank car, so is that to encourage the kids to...
Before I do a school visit, in fact, I send this line art drawing to the school. And by the time I get there, the kids have typically already decorated and designed their own art cars, just like with crayons and things. And sometimes they've used like three-dimensional like glitter and pom-poms. But a lot of times I get there and there's like a whole hallway with art cars everywhere. And they're just so much fun to see. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, did you start doing school visits as soon as you published the book, or how did you get into
I didn't even know that school visits were a thing. I have to be honest. I didn't ever have authors come to my school when I was a child ever. And I remembered them with my son when he was in school, but I hadn't given it much thought. I never went to his school when there was an author. I never visited. So I didn't really know, but I would see the forms and I would sign him up for a book. But I didn't know much about it. I thought that was really just like famous authors. I didn't know that everyday authors could do author visits. So what happened is when I ended up self-publishing my art car book. And when I published it, my nieces went to a school, and my sister talked to the librarian there and was just telling her about my book to see if they would put it in the library. And the librarian was like, well, I'll do better than that. Like, I'd like her to come speak. And so she called me, and I was terrified. I was like, no, I'm not a public speaker. But she gave me some tips, the librarian did. She was like, oh my gosh, you can do this. It's so easy. You can do, which it's not that easy, by the way. But she encouraged me, and I put together a PowerPoint presentation because I kind of thought to myself, I'm going to forget what to say. And I knew somehow just I intuitively knew that if I had a PowerPoint, I could prompt myself like along through the talk. So that's kind of how it happened. The first one was just because my sister put me in touch with her school, which is a great way to get my feet wet. And then she recommended me, that librarian recommended me to some more schools. And so it just sort of slowly took off. It wasn't fast at the beginning, but it did take off. So.
Right. Now, how do you
book
school visits?
So what I do, I call it a cold call, but it's really a cold email, if there is such a thing. I typically, if I think of a school I want to go to, let's say, I go to their website, I look for the librarian. I have found that they're the usual gatekeeper. It's not that a teacher wouldn't invite you. I sometimes do get invited by a teacher, but I typically email the librarian. If I'm just doing a query just to see if they would be interested. I write the librarian. For me, because my books have such a art element to them, I often copy the art teacher. So my first step is I'll go to the website and I do a little research about the school. I'm kind of looking to see if they're a Title I school or a private school, and I'm looking for who is the librarian and who is the art teacher. Not everybody would write an art teacher. It might not apply to every book, but for me, since it's so art driven, being an art car, and even the second book being about yarn bombing, there's just like a lot of real creative hands-on activities they can do. So that's how I do it. So sometimes it's the art teacher that gets interested and kind of pushes, and they go, like she might call the librarian and want me, but then sometimes it's more the librarian driving it. I've heard that some authors will copy the principal on the email. I have to admit, I don't do that, but I don't know that it would be a mistake to do it. But so I write them, and I just don't find that I need to. It seems like the librarians kind of are on top of it, and they know that they'll go through the channel to get permission from the principal if they need to. But that's how I do it. And my email will just be kind of quick and short. Just kind of, this is what I do, and would you be interested in having me? And I add a few attacks. Oh, right. I'm sorry, my phone fell. I'm so sorry. I'm new at this. I'm new at it. You're the old expert. I'm not. But I end up putting some attachments. Like I'll attach I have a flyer and just a few things like that. So.
Oh. So authors need to get a flyer.
Yeah, in fact, I can show it to you. So I have this flyer. If you can see it, it's just a cute little flyer, and I put that in my email because I think it gets their attention. You know, it's kind of bright and colorful, and it has a little bit of information also on the back. The back has some information about my school visit. So it's just a fun little flyer, but I have it scanned and I can do it as an email attachment. And I also I have a book pre-order form, and I just kind of go ahead and show them that up front because I think it gives them a way to just see, oh, these are the two books. This is how she sells books, you know, that kind of thing. And then that's sort of what's in my attachment. So the body of the email and then a couple of attachments. Yeah.
Right. Now, when authors are doing school visits, what can they do to make it engaging?
Well, I'll tell you what I do.
What you do.
But not everybody would do what I do. But I will say, before I say what I do, it's a good point about it being engaging, because I think some people think that we're going to go do a book reading, and you and I don't probably do. I know I don't, and I don't think you do either. We don't just do a book reading. You know, I'm not sitting in a rocking chair reading a story. I'm doing a whole presentation. I'm talking to them about writing, about creativity. I like to talk to them about what inspired my book, how I got that little nugget of inspiration. And I give them a lot of different tips on how they can get their own story ideas. It's very visual, because then I launch into what inspired my book, which is art cars. And I show them a lot of pictures of different art cars. And then at the end of my presentation, the kids go outside and they see a real art car. And that's something that I pre-arrange. Yeah, it's really been fun. The first couple of school visits I didn't even think of that. It never even occurred to me to invite an art car. And then I heard that there was a school that had art cars go to their school, and it just kind of all clicked. And I was like, well, why am I not doing that? So they hear me speak inside, the kids do. They see what inspired my book, and both of my books. I show them like how I get the ideas, and then they go outside and they get to kind of touch and experience the very thing that inspired the book. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, neat. But
Right,
what about
right.
if people don't have a car? What
Yeah.
do you
I
suggest?
think if there's anything you can do to find that niche maybe that makes your book unique or different, right, everybody's not going to have an outdoor experience like I have, but I think anything they can find that makes it a little different, a little unique, is there's something about your message that could have a little just uniqueness to it, so it's not like everybody else's book. I think that's important, and I think every author probably does have that. They have something that's just a little different about either them, why they write, who they're writing to, and I think they can take that and sort of run with it and make their presentation unique. Yeah.
Right. Now, how do you react with the cars? Do they know
The
they're
school,
coming,
does
or
the
what
school know?
happens? Kids, when you present,
The
do they
kids,
know
yeah.
they're going to get to see?
Sometimes we've left it a surprise, but usually by the time I'm there, they kind of know there's going to be an art car because the school's been talking about it. So I tell them, like, if y'all are really good while I'm talking, you're going to have a surprise at the end. So, you know, they're all excited about it for sure. Yeah. So they know at my presentations, they usually know there's going to be a car. They don't always know which one though. So I do. Yeah.
Okay. And so they're out. They don't. Do they ride in it? Or do they?
They just
But they
don't ride in it. Oh, great
They
question.
see-
No, they don't ride in it. They just see it, but they can walk around it. They can usually touch it. They can touch it softly. We tell them like to pet the car. Don't pull on it. So we talked to them about, or I talked to them about being gentle with the car, that this was someone's work of art and it means a lot to them. So don't hurt it. But the kids are always really respectful. It's rare that we have to pull a student out and tell them they were being too rough. That's pretty rare. So, yeah.
Now, what about do's and don'ts with school visits? Are there any best
Well,
practices you would recommend for authors?
I know, like, sometimes, you know, I worry a little bit about behavior in the group. Like 9 times out of 10, the students are behaving and being really polite and respectful, and you can tell which schools have worked on guest speakers. And then there's some, though, that's just not their skill set, let's say. And so I think it's important to know that, like, sometimes I'll ahead of time ask the teachers, like, if you see anything, will you just help me monitor the kids? And I'm always really sweet. If there's a couple, sometimes there'll be a few kids talking right while I'm talking. They're just sitting there talking to each other, and I'll just kind of stop and go, you know, y'all pay attention. I'm getting a little distracted, you know, by your conversation, you know. So I think that's one of the things I would warn about, is just like behavior issues. But I do hope, I usually expect the teachers and the librarian to sort of monitor that for me. So I don't have to do a whole lot with that. Another thing to look out for is technological problems, as we saw at the beginning of this Instagram. I do tell them ahead of time what I'm going to bring. I'm going to bring my PowerPoint. I choose to bring it on a USB thumb drive, but I tell them ahead of time. I know there's also Google Slides. A lot of people are using Google Slides now, and I'm probably about to transition into that. So far my PowerPoint USB has been working, but I'm just starting to realize it's becoming a dinosaur, and maybe I need to move on to Google Slides. So, but I tell them ahead of time what my needs are. Do I need a microphone? You know, that I'm going to use their laptop and their equipment. That's what I choose to do. I think there are some authors that bring their own equipment, but I just bring my file and I use their equipment, because I don't think mine's always compatible with the school's equipment. So I kind of worry about that. So I prefer to use their laptop. they've got their own projection screen. And most of the time, the schools have it down. Like they know exactly, you know, every now and then I run into a school that seems a little unsure how to make it all work, but it always has worked out, knock on wood. It usually works out, even though I'll have a few like heart palpitations sometimes. I think it's smart. Just one more thing. I think it'd be smart to, and I do this, have something in hand if your technology doesn't work where you could just hold things up, because you kind of need that backup that's non-tech just in case. I've never had to do that though. So yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Just in case, or
just kind of hold, right. Just at least something you could hold up. Maybe what I've done, and again, I've never had to use it, but I've printed out just a page of each one of my slides, and I know that I could hold them up if I had to. Luckily, I've never had to, and it would be hard for the kids to see, but it would be better than nothing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what other things are there? Other best practices?
I know for me, you were asking me how I get the school visits, and I was telling you that I email the librarian. I circle back if I haven't heard from them in a few weeks, because I know they get busy, and they don't seem to mind that I've circled back. They don't get offended. Some librarians I never hear back from, but you know, some I do. So I just try to be persistent in a polite way without bugging them. You know, I don't call them. I don't call the librarians on the phone because I don't think they have time to deal with phone calls, but I email them. But then what I do when they're interested, one of my best practices is the first thing I do is I'm securing a date. The absolute, before we can talk about anything, I'm like, what day do you want? Because once I get that date and I've gotten them to confirm, you know, that they're okay with the price, then I can invoice them. And it's like my first step is just to invoice them to get that handled up front. And then we start talking about all the details about what room am I going to be in, and do you provide lunch or not provide lunch? You know, all those little details that sort of the minutia can happen later, but I get the date and the invoice done very quickly. So.
Question that occurred to me. Do you do multiple presentations, or how long?
What I do is my presentation is about 25 minutes, and then I can do a Q&A with the kids if the librarian wants me to. Sometimes they want me to, and sometimes they actually don't, because I think they think the kids, there's too many kids and it might get rowdy. But I'll do like 25 minutes. I have time for a Q&A, and then they spend about 15 minutes outside with the art car. So the whole thing will take about 45 minutes, and then I have a little break, then the next. I do them back to back. I often do 6 or 7 presentations in a day, and I'm exhausted. And I know some authors have limits and won't do that many, and more power to them. But for me, it ends up being like K 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got 6 presentations. And then sometimes they want me to talk to the preschool also. A lot of these schools have preschools now. Right. So I'll do that. So I know some authors have chosen to like not present to the really little kids. It's what I've heard, at least from librarians. But I'm like, you know, the more the merrier. I'll talk to everyone. So I have like 2 levels of talks I do. And then for the preschoolers, I really talk even more easy with them. But I have one talk that's for like K1, 2. And then I have another one that's for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And that's pretty much how mine levels out for what I'm doing. And one's just a little bit more focused on a lot of writing tips and that kind of thing. And the K1 and 2, I actually read the story to them along with writing tips and things. But mostly I'm telling them about who I am. I'm a real author, and here's what art cars are. And now let's read the story. So for the younger kids, it's a little easier presentation. For the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I know they want more content, more, you know, more good writing information and publishing information. And yeah. Did that answer the question?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now,
okay.
Yeah. Yes. Now, in the comments, someone asked about pricing. Are you able to speak on that?
Yeah,
They were asking what
absolutely
average price
speak on that. And I will say, the first one talk I did for free because I needed to get my feet wet and see what it was like. And from then on, I just started charging. And a lot of that came because of advice from the SCBWI group that we're a part of. They were really encouraging us to not do free talks because, you know, our time is valuable. Get paid for what you're doing, be a professional. And I agree with that. And so I do charge. I don't mind saying what I charge, but I charge, for me, what I charge is I'll do a half day for $400 and a full day for $600. I know authors who charge much more than that. I just feel like, for me, and for being, I don't know if self-published makes a difference between traditional published and self, but in my mind, it does. And so I keep my rates a little lower. I've heard that my rates are affordable. When I've talked to the librarians, they tell me they appreciate it. I know some authors who charge even less than that, and I know some that charge more. So I think I'm around the middle, maybe a little low to middle, but I don't really know for sure.
Right.
Just when I've asked around, I know some of the bigger name traditional authors charge upwards all the way up to $1,500. So plus travel, you know, there'll be travel involved,
Right.
and hotels, and most of my visits are local, so I'm not having to do that, but I have done some out of town visits. So
Right. Now, what about on your
I
website? Do you
and
put the
it's
price?
a good question, because I actually sort of learned through trial and error. I just go ahead and put it in my first email to the librarian. And I don't know if that's the popular way to do it, but I'm just like, let me just tell them, because otherwise there's a quick assumption that there might not be a fee, and I don't want them to be confused at all. And I'm not saying I would never, ever do a school visit for free. You know, I like sometimes if there's a school in need and I really feel like they can't afford it, I'm like, look, I'm there, I'll do it. But that might only be like once a year, twice a year. It doesn't happen that often that I feel like I need to extend that. Usually the schools that contact me have a budget for this type of thing. Yeah. So I put my fee on my website and in my first query letter to the librarian. I just go ahead and say it. Just put it out there. Yeah.
And when you and I was thinking too, are you a member? There's a Facebook group called
and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think it's a really good Facebook group I printed it out. This is the Facebook group. They've got like over 2 million. You're right. It's called Create Engaging School Visits. And you just ask to join. There's over 2 million members, and it's a place where you can go ask questions and get answers. And I love it. It's a great group. I love it. And yeah, there's also this book I'm sure you've heard of, but I'm going to toot her horn. Kim Norman. It's called Sell Books and Get Paid Doing Author School Visits. It's on Amazon, and I didn't know about it when I first started out. And so, but as soon as I heard about it, I ordered the book, and I was pleasantly surprised that I was doing a lot of things that she recommended, but I had to learn through trial and error. And if I had read her book ahead of time, I wouldn't have had to learn so many things the hard way. But it's a great book. She covers everything. Yeah.
You can write a book.
Well, hey, maybe.
You know, you can write a book. And well, and she's affiliated with the Create Engaging School Visits Facebook group.
Who
so
is
she
the
used
name
to
again?
be a moderator or something.
Yeah, Kim Norman. Yeah.
Kim Norman.
I think she used to be a part of that. She might be still a moderator. I know she's involved in it. And I'm always recommending her book quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but the information you have given us today has been just a wealth of information.
Well, this is fun. Yeah, I could talk about this all day. Like, and you could too, I bet. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I'm glad
I know.
to talk to you because I've seen you around, and we
Right.
at school.
We were at
actually.
a school
in
Sugarland one time together, and I didn't get to meet you that day, and I wanted to meet you, and then I finally met you at the SCBWI meeting. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to have to get together for lunch or something.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cathey, for sharing your information. This has been very helpful for people and those who will be watching it later.
Yeah.
Will be learning.
Well, thank you for everything you're doing too. I love following you, and you're doing a great job. So thank you for what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all, and thank you everybody for tuning in to this episode of Write This, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks, because I'm off for spring break next week.
Well, I'm gonna start tuning in.
A couple weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Tonya. Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Cathey.